At the age of 12 years old, I shot myself. I was in the house. Police knocked on the door. I was right there. They knocked the door down. Everybody jumped over my body to go get the guns and drugs and whatever they could find. It took one guy to stop right there and cuss everybody that hopped over me out. Like, what the f*** are y'all doing? They said, oh, no, we was going to see if it... What the f*** are y'all doing? We called the ambulance. An ambulance, do you not see this kid on the floor with this hole in his chest? I said, you drive. Pick me up. Brought me to the hospital. He didn't drop me off at the ambulance and say, you take him. He brought me to the hospital room and made two and stood there and waited to the doctor.
At 29 and I find myself wondering what did happen to the last 10. I ran away with my life, fast forward, never turn back again. It's kind of funny that the more we pass time, the more we need to set them rewind. And 19 was the year I had to leave you, but now I'm seeing all the signs. Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised as you. Is this really happening? I can't be too sure, but one day I'll be yours again.
Yeah, you're the last one. Oh my god, what the... Hey! Hey! Get the fuck out of here! Ah! Get out! Get the fuck out! Get out of here! Get the fuck out! What is it? Somebody just tried breaking in the house. Oh my god. I just cut off my arm. Oh my god. Bro, I gotta go to the hospital. I gotta get stitches. I gotta get stitches hooked up. Here, rub or something. I'm sorry for breaking the glass, but he scared the shit out of me.
It's disturbing to know that this movie is based on a true story, and it highlights the importance of why you should be careful who your friends are. The movie was called A Girl Fight, and it was about a girl named Haley Macklin who was initially an outsider because of her intelligence. But when she becomes friends with a group of popular girls, they find out that she had previously posted mean comments about them on social media. So they lure her into one of the friends' home and they beat her up and dump her in a parking lot. And it's actually based on the case of Victoria Lindsay, the smart Florida cheerleader who was being video recorded being beaten by 6 of her friends for over 30 minutes, while 2 guys guarded the door outside of the home while she was being beaten so she couldn't leave. On March 30th, 2008, Victoria, who was staying at Mercedes' grandma's house, was asked by Mercedes to quickly come back home as soon as possible. Mercedes was described as a ringleader because she lured Victoria into the home without her knowing what was about to happen. Victoria did not fight back because she stated that she wanted to protect herself as much as possible, and she actually thought she wasn't going to make it out alive. She lost consciousness twice, suffered a concussion, and injuries to her left ear and eye, which caused blurry vision. Charges were dropped against the 2 boys who had guarded the door and Kara Murphy, who had recorded the video. The other 5 had received probation, community service, or had to pay restitution. And it was believed that the intention of recording the video was to post it on YouTube in the first place.
One of the most successful serial killers in history is never talked about. Let's talk about Julia Tofana, who was said to have killed around 600 men. That is a lot of men. There is little known about Julia's life and upbringing. No pictures, nothing. This story takes place in the Renaissance period in Italy. Back then, women didn't really have any rights. Like, at all. They were usually forced into arranged, loveless marriages. In this time, when you got married, your husband owned you. Men had full ownership and control over their wives. Husbands would often beat their wives without any consequence. And unfortunately for the women, divorce was basically non-existent at the time. It wasn't even an option. So safe to say there was a lot of women stuck in abusive and loveless marriages with no way out. That's until Julia started her little business. Julia created an odorless, tasteless, and colorless, undetectable poison, and she put it in makeup products. She disguised her poison in beauty products that women could easily keep on their vanity and no one would question it. She called it Aqua Tofana. Pretty cool name. This product would allow women to discreetly kill their husbands over the span of 4 days. A few drops every day, and the initial symptoms would simply seem like a flu. A few more drops the next few days, and it would slowly weaken and eventually kill the men. You're probably wondering how she got away with killing all of these men without anybody noticing. Well, Julia was very careful. She didn't just sell Aqua Tofana to anyone. Any new client had to be verified by a past client and have a background check. Julia's clients were actually really protective over her as well and kept her secret. This went on for over 20 years. Julia would also coach the women on how to act around the days of the poison. After the first day, when the husband starts getting the flu symptoms, to act really concerned and call a doctor. The doctor would come and assume it was just a basic illness, give them medication, and leave. The key was that the women were the ones to call the doctor. They had to act concerned, anxious. When the husbands would eventually die, the doctors would be baffled. And the key to all this was that the women were told to demand an autopsy. But the thing about Aqua Tofana is that it was undetectable in an autopsy, meaning that all of these deaths came back as natural causes. Unfortunately, the story is too long for one video, so come back for part 2 to see what happens next. After 73 years, the Somerton Man has finally been identified. This was one of Australia's most famous unsolved mysteries. Hi, I'm Meg. I cover true crime. Let's get into this super mysterious case. November 30th, 1948, the body of a man is found on Somerton Beach, Adelaide. When police got there, there was no form of identification on the man at all. Here is some information about him. He was clean shaven, wearing a suit, but all of his clothing tags had been removed. He had an unused train ticket on him that was meant to go to a separate beach. He also had cigarettes and a pack of juicy fruit. He was thought to be 40 to 50 years old. He had some genetic abnormalities, one of them being with his teeth. This abnormality was only shown in 2% of men, and the other one had to do with the shape of his ears. That's all important later. Everyone who had examined him post-mortem said that his death was certainly not natural. His official cause of death was said to be heart failure with a strong suspicion of poisoning. But there was no sign of poison in his actual autopsy, so they couldn't confirm it. They checked his fingerprints, no matches. They then circled his photo everywhere, and nobody claimed him. Police had a few responses, so people did come and view the body, but no one ever recognized him. Nothing would happen for another 6 weeks. A suitcase was found at the train station where he had bought the unused ticket. Now, you're probably wondering how they connected this suitcase to the Somerton Man. So, first of all the clothes in this suitcase had their tags removed. And some of these clothes were mended with orange thread. Some of the clothes that the Somerton Man was wearing was also mended with the exact same orange thread. So they were basically able to 100% say that that suitcase belonged to him. Then a huge piece of evidence was found in May. They found a hidden pocket in his trousers. And in this secret pocket, there was a tiny rolled up piece of paper. This piece of paper had been ripped out of a book and it had the words Tamon Shud. I probably butchered that. It's Persian and it translates to, "It is the end." This piece of paper had been ripped out from a very, very old book. I'm going to try not to butcher this, but it was called The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. How'd I do? The police were out on the search to find the exact book that this had been ripped out of. And they did find the book. More like the book found them. A man walked into the police station with that exact book with the piece ripped out, claiming that somebody else put it in his car. I've run out of time, but you have to come back for part 2. This CCTV footage shows this woman's last moments before she was brutally murdered by this man only moments later. Hi, I'm Meg. I talk about true crime. Let's get into this case. Grace Millane was only 22 and she had just graduated from the University of Lincoln. She was really excited about what was next to come. She had spent years saving up for a backpacking trip, and it was finally time for her to go. First, she went to South America for around 6 weeks. And according to her family, she was bombarding them with updates and pictures. She was a family girl. In November of 2018, she arrived in New Zealand. She was doing the whole solo travel thing, so she was on her own. Over a week later, she made her way to Auckland, where she checked into a hostel. Overall, she seemed to have been having a great time. December 1st, 2018, only a day before her birthday, she leaves the hostel at 6 p.m. to meet up with a guy from Tinder. This Tinder date's name was Jesse and he was 26 years old. You can see them meeting here in the CCTV footage and heading over to a restaurant/bar. Grace was being safe and she was texting her friend during the entire date, telling her that they were really compatible and that was going well. Jesse was apparently living in a hotel at the time, and around 9:30 they decided to head there. And these are Grace's last moments seen alive. The footage that comes after this is insane. December 2nd, aka the next day, was Grace's birthday, so her loved ones from England just started sending her loads of texts. Happy birthday, they were trying to call her. She wasn't responding, which was extremely out of character for her. Now, let me show you what Jesse was doing on the 2nd of December. Here's Jesse leaving the hotel. Here's Jesse up in that corner, buying a suitcase, returning it to the hotel, buying cleaning supplies, and lifting these suitcases back into the elevator and into a rental car that he bought that day. That same day, he even bought carpet cleaner, like a whole machine that cleans carpets, and told the hotel it was because he spilled some red wine on the floor. Safe to say he's looking a bit suspicious. By December 5th, Grace's family had not heard back from her yet. At this point, they had a really bad feeling, and so they called the Auckland police to let them know that she was missing. So they filed the missing persons report, and the Auckland police started digging. The police did an amazing job in this case. Go to part 2 to see what happened next because it's insane. This is the woman people are calling the real-life Gone Girl. She faked her own horrific abduction and wasted 5 years of police time. You're not going to want to miss this one. It is absolutely insane. This all begins November 2nd of 2016. Keith Papini returned home from work at around 5 p.m. He was expecting to come home to his 34-year-old wife, Sherry Papini, and his 2 kids, but they weren't home. Keith called the daycare where his kids were staying and asked when Sherry came to pick up the kids. The daycare then told him that she never came, so the kids were okay. He immediately finds this very strange, calls the police, and reports her missing. This was taken very seriously by the police. She seemed to have vanished out of thin air. It wasn't long before the news was reporting on it, and her missing posters were all over California. Because there were no leads, fingers pointed at Keith, the husband. Everyone thought it was Keith. He even took a polygraph test and passed it, but people still thought it was him. That's until 22 days later, when Sherry returned. 150 miles away from where she was last seen, a driver finds her walking on the side of the road in chains. This driver called the police and she was brought in. She was covered in bruises. She had lost weight and her back had been branded. Understandably, police were shocked. When asked what happened, she claimed that 2 Hispanic women abducted her. She claimed that they were going to sell her to a man and that's why she was branded. Police were taking this very seriously. Sherry explained in detail the abuse that she went through and the room she was in. She also described the women enough for them to create a sketch of people who did not exist, because it was all a lie. Police found it very strange that these abductors just let her go, but this isn't to say that they didn't believe her. They definitely did, and they took it very seriously. They were determined to find out who did this to this poor mother of two. The government helped pay for therapy for her PTSD and anxiety after this event. During this time, police were testing her clothes, and they finally found DNA. This DNA belonged to a man, not a woman. And she apparently encountered no men during this kidnapping. They put it through the police database and nothing came up. That's until 2020 when they decided to put it through a genealogy database, hoping that someone related to the person with this DNA went on like Ancestry or anything like that. With this, they were able to find the exact person with that DNA. And this person was Sherry's ex-boyfriend. This story only gets crazier from here, so come back for part 2. It'll be up the moment I'm done filming.
Hi, I'm Lexi. In 2015, I was the victim of an attack by my friends in which I almost died. A lot of people have a lot of questions about that attack, as I've been sharing my story on TikTok for the last couple months. And today I actually wanted to bring out my mother to help answer some of those questions, particularly questions about her. All right, Mom, so how did you find out what was happening, and how did you feel when you found out what was happening?
I found out by a phone call that was kind of muffled and far away, and I could hear that you were trying to tell me something, but I more heard your friend telling me that everything was fine, but I knew everything wasn't fine because that's not a call I ever got from you. Or how I felt was panicked. I was on my way to someplace far away, and I immediately wanted to turn around and find you.
What did I say on that call?
You said, something's wrong with me. I don't know what they did, and I immediately knew they did something to you. Okay. And I didn't know what it was or how bad it was, but I knew that something had happened.
And did I mention that there were like drugs or anything on that phone call?
Yes, you said that you think that they gave you something, and I knew a little bit about that girl, and I didn't trust her, and I knew immediately, something told me immediately that she had given you something or done something, and I started screaming. What did you give her? What happened? What? And then the call was disconnected.
Okay. So you next saw me again in the hospital. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I luckily had a friend on the police department of the town, and she was able to get someone to you. I think someone called, and she was able to tell me where you were, and I had my parents first go because I was far away, like I said, for taking your younger sister to gymnastics competition. So Mimi and Papa went, and I rushed to get there as soon as I could, but they were with you at the beginning. And when I saw you, it was probably a half hour into you having been there. And Mimi, I always remember that Mimi said to me, I'm so glad that you didn't see her when she came in, because it was really bad. And you had started to be a little bit more like...
it's about to cut out.
Like a little bit more coherent, a little bit, by the time I got there.
Yeah. Okay, hold on.
What the fuck? Is this thing on?
The emergency?
My daughter is missing.
What's your address, ma'am?
She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
Okay, what's her name, ma'am?
Carly, Carlie.
And last name?
Brucia, Brucia.
The footage you just watched shows the last known moments of 11-year-old Carly Bruscia as she was abducted in broad daylight by a violent predator. Despite being reported missing by her parents within half an hour of her disappearance, Carly's case would ultimately go down in history as one of the most depraved crimes against a young girl. It all started on January 31st, 2004. Carly had spent the night at a friend's house, but the following day was Super Bowl Sunday, so she wanted to get back home in time to watch the game. She told her friend's mother that she was allowed to make the walk back home on her own and departed around 6 p.m. However, after she left, the concerned parent reached out to Carly's mother, Susan, and informed her that Carly was walking the mile back home alone. Susan said she didn't feel comfortable with her daughter walking even just a few blocks alone, so she sent her husband and Carly's stepfather, Steve Kanzler, to find Carly and drive her the rest of the way home. However, as Steve went up and down the route Carly would have walked, he couldn't find her anywhere, and that's when the nightmare really began. Steve continued to drive around for over an hour, praying that he had somehow simply missed Carly, but when he returned home and she still wasn't there, it became clear that something was seriously wrong. Susan later said of this moment that she instantly felt something terrible had happened to Carly, saying, "In my heart, in my mind, I knew." Susan and Steve left the house together to search again, shouting Carly's name out the car window as they drove down the road. They stopped briefly to investigate a wooded area and noticed a red tow truck drive slowly by them. Then they continued retracing Carly's steps and went to her friend's house to check there. And much to their surprise, they saw the same red truck parked out front. It struck them both as very odd, and upon realizing that Carly wasn't there either, Susan decided it was time to call for help. The frantic mother dialed 911 around 7:30 that evening. She couldn't hide the absolute terror in her voice.
911, what's the location of the emergency?
My daughter is missing.
What's your address, ma'am? And your phone number? Okay. Has she been missing before?
No, she had a fight with her girlfriend. She decided to walk home, and we've been driving around for about an hour and a half. And it's not an hour and a half walk. She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
And when was the last time that she was seen?
It was at 6 o'clock, Jean. Around 6 o'clock.
And she was at a friend's house?
Yeah.
Okay, what's her name, ma'am?
Carly, C-A-R-L-I-E.
And last name?
Bruscia, B-R-U-C-I-A. She's just shy of 5 feet.
Okay. Do you know how much she weighs?
She's around 120 pounds.
Okay, what color hair does she have?
Pretty blonde.
And what color eyes?
Blue.
Following the heartbreaking call, police immediately issued a BOLO, or Be on the Lookout alert for Carly, and searched the surrounding area for 4.5 hours, but found nothing. Meanwhile, Carly's family and friends got to work creating missing persons flyers with her face on them, and they began handing them out the next morning. But something happened during this time that struck a few people as suspicious. Carly's stepfather, Steve, allegedly visited a local equipment rental business to hand out flyers and asked one of the employees if he could purchase drugs in a couple of days after this whole thing blew over. The employee thought it was a very odd thing to say when his stepdaughter was missing, so he contacted the authorities. Detectives also felt that something was off with Steve, so they brought him in for questioning. He stated that he'd been at home the entire time with Susan, which she was able to corroborate. After fully verifying his alibi, he was cleared as a suspect, but Steve did offer them another name, Ron Choquette. Ron was the owner of the red tow truck, and he'd apparently been dating the mother of Carly's friend for 2 months. He was home the night Carly slept over, and at one point, he was the only adult present. So naturally, Steve informed police about how he'd noticed Ron's red truck.
Mom, can you just pass my drink that's on the table, please? Thanks.
A 7-year-old girl was lured into a public restroom, and what followed was unimaginable horror. Hello, true crimers. This is the case of Scariest Iverson. Viewer discretion is advised. Charisse was born on October 20th, 1989 in Los Angeles, California. Unfortunately, she only got to live for 7 years, so there is not much of a backstory on her. It was Memorial Day weekend, May 25th, 1997, in Primm, Nevada. Charisse and her family were there on vacation. At approximately 3:30 a.m. at the Prima Donna Resort, Charisse was basically left on her own while her father was upstairs gambling. Charisse would be caught on CCTV as she was kind of roaming around the arcade, and there were several other people there as well. Sometime shortly after 4 a.m., Charisse's body was discovered in the women's restroom. Someone had tried to shove her in the toilet, and it appeared that someone had also sexually assaulted her. Once police had the CCTV footage, they found something kind of disturbing. A younger white male was walking around the arcade at one point with a friend. But then this footage picks him up playing with what appears to be the 7-year-old girl, Charisse Iverson. He's kind of following her around at different arcade machines, and then at one point they're playing hide and go seek. Police would later find more footage of this man outside the hotel, and a few days later they were able to discover who it was. It was an 18-year-old man named Jeremy Strohmeyer. He had been in Primm, Nevada with a friend and his family. They were visiting from Long Beach, California. He was actually arrested in Long Beach, and this was because police had been sharing images of this man at the casino who was just wanted for questioning, and his own friends and family recognized him, so they turned him in. So he was extradited back to Las Vegas. Jeremy was adopted by a very wealthy family when he was really, really young. And from there, he led a very, very privileged life. He basically got anything he wanted. He even had his own private jet. When he was shown the CCTV footage and presented with, evidence, he just basically confessed. And I do want to give you a bit of a trigger warning because what I'm about to tell you is extremely disturbing. Jeremy and his 17-year-old friend David Cash were roaming the arcade. Charisse had this wadded up paper towel that she was throwing, and it accidentally hit Jeremy. Jeremy decided to take this opportunity to play with her and play hide and go seek around the arcade. He tells police that at that point he said the safest and best place for you to hide Charisse would be in the women's restroom. And she took his advice and she went into the women's restroom. Jeremy and his friend David then proceeded to go into the women's restroom shortly after her. All of that of them all walking into the restroom was caught on camera. He says they played for a few minutes, and then he suddenly put his hand around her mouth and dragged her into the handicap stall. David Cash went into the stall opposite and was kind of looking over. He said at that point she was struggling, trying to scream, and she was flailing about when 2 women came into the restroom, and he made sure that she was quiet. And both men kind of hid. After the women left the restroom, Jeremy, he began to, he said, fondle the little girl because he was attracted to her. And then he sexually assaulted her. And then at one point, his friend just leaves the restroom. But then Jeremy decides, well, this little girl knows what I look like and what I just did to her, so now she needs to be silent. He says he strangled her for a few minutes, but she kind of slipped in and out of consciousness but didn't die. He then says he took his hand underneath her chin and another hand behind her head and snapped her neck, he said, like he had seen in the movies. It still didn't work. She was still alive and still flailing. So then he grabbed her again in the same way and he snapped her neck a second time. Then he says he realized she was dead. He folded her body in half and tried to shove her in the toilet. And then he just calmly walked out 20 minutes later and went about his business. And the camera picks him up acting completely normal, like nothing happened. During Jeremy's confession, the detective said he was just totally calm, cool, and collected, like it was nothing. They asked him, did you at any point try to give her CPR to maybe, reverse what you did after he strangled her? He said, no, I just knew I had to kill her, so I killed her. During their investigation, they found out that all of the girlfriends he had in the past, he tried to make them dress up like little girls. When all of this came about, his adopted parents found out that his birth parents both struggled with severe mental health issues, but the adoption agency never foreclosed that information. So his adopted parents would later sue the system. And this whole thing actually ended up changing adoption laws, at least in California, where now all of that information about the parents has to be disclosed. Prosecutors would seek the death penalty for Jeremy, but he would eventually just plead guilty so that he didn't get the death penalty, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His friend David Cash was never prosecuted. David Cash even told a newspaper that he didn't dwell on the murder. He said, quote, "I'm not going to get upset over somebody else's life. I just worry about myself first. I'm not going to lose sleep over somebody else's problems," end quote. He later said, "I don't feel remorse because I didn't know her." He would only be labeled as the Bad Samaritan, but he got off scot-free. That later led to bills in Nevada that required people to report crimes. Her father also wasn't punished, even though he was told not to leave her alone.